which is good. Okay, we're all good. Well,
Okay, so you're all, Karen, are you all set with the Q&A?
I guess, I mean, what do I do?
So ladies, so we're gonna, everybody is in and it's exciting to have everybody here. So if people have a question, they should go ahead and type it into the chat. And then Karen, will you be reading the chat out loud?
So Lisa, Liz, we're using the Q&A function because what's
Okay.
happening with the chat is the questions are coming so fast, it's hard to keep track of
Oh, okay,
what they're
great.
asking. Okay.
All right.
Karen, there's a little button that says Q&A at the bottom of your screen.
I'm looking for it. No, I don't see it. I see. Oh, yes, I do. I see it.
Okay, if you click on that,
Yeah.
if there's a question, it'll show up right in the beginning.
Okay.
If you've answered the question either verbally or in person, just click answered and it goes away.
Okay.
And if there's a question that's not, relevant, or you can just,
All right. But now if I answer it, does that interfere with Liz?
no.
So I can vocally answer it or I answer it in writing?
I would answer it in writing.
Okay.
Unless there is a question that Liz needs to answer, and then you would ask Liz that question, and then you would just go click on answered.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So there are no questions there now, but if there were one, I would hit open
Yes.
and then I would answer and then that would be
Yeah.
it.
Let me type a quick question and maybe it'll
Okay,
help you.
good.
Let's see if I can. Hold on.
Okay.
Well, let me see here. We may have to use the chat after all. Huh. I should be able to open it.
Well, do you need to be, you are a host though, aren't you? Oh, here you are. Here's a test. Okay. Now it says answer live or type answer. So I would type answer.
Or if it's a question to ask Liz,
Yeah.
like they want to know something, then you would just click that you answered it live.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Is that going to be better than doing the chat?
I would say good luck to you all.
Wow.
Quite a few people, and usually there's a lot of questions. Yeah.
Oh
But-
dear.
I'll help you, Karen, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so okay. Then do you want me to leave the chat open?
I think either one, but just one is good. Yeah.
Okay, what is your preference, ladies?
You say, because you know more about this, Kathy, than I
Well,
do.
I liked but Mary just said about the Q&A, so let's give it a shot. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
so, all right, so everybody, chat has been disabled and your questions will be answered by either Karen or Kathy.
Okay.
Okay. And
You're-
shall we get started, Liz? I'm going to introduce you, hon.
All set.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, thank you, Liz. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining AARP's New Hampshire's sponsored program with the Creative Feast, Cook Like a Chef Dessert Sauces. My name is Kathy Hoey, and I am your host and a volunteer with AARP New Hampshire. A great sauce is the perfect way to complete any dessert. Liz Barber is ready to show you how to make these quality restaurant dessert sauces in your own kitchen. During this class, Chef Liz Barber of the Creative Feast will share her skills with you and answer your questions while preparing 2 sweet sauce recipes. And I'm sure she'll share the recipe on her website. AARP has been promoting the health and well-being of older adults for 60 years. Here in New Hampshire, we strive to bring you informative, innovative, and fun virtual events like today's online cook-along demonstrations as a means of connection and inclusion. Today's event is part of a series with the Creative Feast, focusing on food and its impact on healthy living. AARP has numerous free healthy living resources on its website. from staying fit to wellness and longevity, information on healthy eating, as well as staying sharp. There's something for everyone. And I will put a link in the question and answer. If you have any questions or comments during this session about AARP New Hampshire, the cooking demonstration, please put them in the Q&A section, and Karen, my fellow AARP volunteer, and myself will raise them to Liz. We hope you enjoy this program, and Liz, you can take it away.
And
Great.
Liz, before you do that, we do have a question that I would ask you to answer, and that is, how do people get the recipes?
So I am going to share my website with you, so I'll take you right there, okay? And then
Great.
we'll go on from here. Excuse the noise, I just turned on my induction cooktop. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Rather than me going back and forth to the stove, I thought you'd like to see an overhead view of the sauces. But welcome everyone to my virtual kitchen here in Hollis, New Hampshire. It's a pleasure to have you join me today. And we are going to be, I'm going to be showing you two dessert sauces. And it's funny because, of course, you know, healthy living and healthy sauces and healthy food, you know, how can a dessert sauce be healthy? So you really have to think about the idea that when you prepare something yourself at home from scratch, it's significantly healthier than when you buy a sauce or something that's pre-made or manufactured and you don't know what they put in there, or you don't know where it's made. So just by virtue of preparing these yourselves, you are actually being a healthy cook. And we know that with dessert sauces and sugary things, when we have them every once in a while, that's okay. We don't have to eat them every day, and we don't have to eat large quantities. So I know that you all will, you know, find a healthy way to include these sauces in your meal planning. But before we get started, I want to take you to my website. So I'm going to share that with you now. And there I have prepared a special page for AARP. So this has been something that I should have done a while ago, but I'm delighted that we have this. So if you go to my website at thecreativefeast.com, you will find all kinds of fun information there. You are welcome to join me for my classes. You can go to my calendar, and there you can register for my classes as well, that I have libraries hosting. So for example, tonight, if you register, you can join me for a winter sheet pan class, and that's free of charge. So check out my calendar. If you go over to where it says food and fun, that's where my recipe blog is. Now, if you come down, see where it says recipe blog, and then if I go over here, it says AARP 2023 cook along classes. So this is a page just for you. So you can check out all of the recipes that I've done previously. We have a new slate of recipes coming up, new slate of classes coming up beginning in April. So I'll be adding those. But here you can see that today's recipes are right here. So here is the creme anglaise, and here's the spiced caramel sauce. If you go further back, you'll see that last time we did soups, and I made a mistake and I prepared the wrong soup, believe it or not. So guess what I did for you? I created a video for you. You can check out the video here along with the recipe for the sausage stew with lentils. So all of that information is there just for you. Again, when you go to where it says food and fun recipe blog, come over and there's your AARP. Now, if you just happen to go to my recipe blog, you're still gonna find those recipes. They are just, you know, as you scroll down, so here's our creme anglaise recipe. But also if you come over to my recipe categories and come down to desserts, you're gonna find both of those recipes here under dessert. So easy ways for you to get around. You can also check out my intermittent fasting information, low carb, my gardens, all kinds of things here. So I hope you take your time looking around my website. You'll see lots of fun stuff. So let's head on back. I am already, we've got some action going on. So the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to make the creme anglaise. Now, each of these recipes takes a little time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be preparing them, but also filling in while they're cooking. And I'm showing you that with some information that I know you'll find interesting. So first off, what we want to do is, let me just turn this off so we can, I'm just going to turn that off and check everything. We're good. Okay, so what we're doing is we are creating two sauces, and I chose these two sauces because they're a little bit on the difficult side initially. Some people get a little overwhelmed with the idea of, especially with the creme anglaise, it is a classic English custard sauce, which means we are using eggs. And for many of us, me included, it's a little bit intimidating because you're afraid, well, what if I overcook it? Will I scramble the eggs? Well, that could happen. But sometimes when you see somebody doing it, it really takes the mystery out of the preparation. And that's what I'm hoping to do for you today. And then the second sauce is a caramel sauce, same idea, that what if I don't do it right? Will I burn the caramel? You could, but I'm going to show you how to do it and signs to look for in the sauce, which is why I have my overhead camera here. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and then the ladies will interrupt me with your questions so I can get them answered. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure we have a pot of simmering water. We're going to be using the double boil method to prepare our sauce. So here I have a pot, with about 1.5 to 2 inches worth of water. You're going to bring that to a simmer. So either bring it to a boil and drop it to a simmer, or start just, on a low flame. And then when it comes to a simmer, it's ready for the preparation of your sauce. We want to make sure always when the sauce is on top that it is in a simmer mode. So what does that mean? Boiling is going like this and simmering is just going like this. What I always like to clarify for people to remember is we're going to, when you place your double boiler, the top where I'm using a bowl on top of my pot and it's over the heat, I'm actually, it's like putting a lid on. And so the temperature tends to go up. So you do want to check to make sure, is it still at a simmer? Okay, so I generally will start at a boil and then drop my flame way down so that it is just barely simmering. A little bit of movement is fine. Now, I've got my water to the boil, so I'm just going to set this aside for a second while we get the rest of the sauce ready to go onto the pot. Now, what we want to do first is we want to put egg yolks in. So it is a custard sauce. Okay, it's going to be a loose custard. This is not going to get terribly thick while we're preparing it. It will thicken up once you finish it and put it in the refrigerator. But it starts with egg yolks. So we want to make sure we get our egg yolks in our pot, so in our pan. So I'm going to, we've got 4 egg yolks. So I'm cracking my eggs. Now I am using pasture-raised eggs from pasture-raised chickens. And the reason I'm doing that is you can see how beautifully orange my egg yolks are. Pasture-raised chickens are free range outside, so they're able to get bugs and grass and all kinds of greenery in their diet, and that will add to the nutrient value of their eggs. So that's why when you're using eggs for any recipe, but a recipe like this where it's going to show the color, you want to make sure you have these bright orange yolks that come from your pasture-raised chickens. I've recently been buying these eggs from Trader Joe's. They seem to have a really good price on them here in New England. So check out all the different places. Certainly if you can get them from a local farm, that's going to be your best source. So there are my egg yolks, and I'll just save my egg white. And I can make a meringue, or I can cook them up and add them to any kind of a meal, in a salad, because these are full of protein. You do not want to get rid of those. You want to hang on to them. Okay, so that's 4 egg yolks, and then I've got 1/3 of a cup of sugar. And so these we're going to give a quick whisk to, and the idea here is that I want to get this so it almost has the consistency of mayonnaise. All right, so let me just do a little bit of, I want to do a close up here on this so you can see what it looks like now. And then as I whisk it, you're going to notice that the grain from the sugar is going to become less as the sugar is absorbed by the egg yolk. But more importantly, you'll see that these egg yolks are going to start to thicken up and almost lighten up in color. Okay, so a nice size whisk is a great idea. This is, a pretty standard size whisk. It's very worthwhile to get a good quality whisk so it doesn't collapse as you're whisking. This is nice and sturdy. I've had this one for years, but you can see now that it's starting to lighten up and thicken up as we go along. All right, so we're kind of, again, it's part of the idea of getting that sugar absorbed by the egg yolks into the egg yolks and pumping some air into those egg yolks and just really giving them a really good whisk. And that's pretty good. And how does it look like mayonnaise to me? Well, you see how when I stir it, you can see those almost ripples. It's almost, you can tell that it's thickened up, and that's perfect. So that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so that's that first step. Now we're going to go ahead and before boiling our water, I apologize. What we're going to do is we're going to bring our milk to a simmer. So you can be using milk or heavy cream, or you can be using a combination of both. So in today's recipe, I'm going to be using 1 cup of heavy cream and 1 cup of whole milk. I made one earlier today that it was all heavy cream. You can do either one, but heavy cream is getting a little bit on the expensive side, so it's nice to have the option to do both. And so what we're doing is we are getting our, let's see, we're going to bring this up to, we're bringing this up to a simmer so that the heat from this cream milk combination, or all cream if that's what you're using, we're going to temper it into our eggs. And what that will do is that will raise the temperature of the eggs up so that they're equal, and then we'll put them over the double boiler so we won't then scramble our eggs right away. All right, so if I use cold milk with the eggs, that would take a lot longer to bring that up to temperature. But by bringing this up to a nice simmer and then very gently adding it in here, we will raise the temperature of the eggs so that they'll then cook much more evenly and they won't scramble. So that's what we're doing right now, and with our milk. Now, the other ingredients that we're going to add to this towards the end is we're going to add vanilla. And in the recipe, I shared with you my favorite brand of vanilla. Let me just grab that from my drawer so I can share it with you. You want to use a good quality vanilla extract. This is Everland, which is one of my favorites, but it is on the recipe for you so that you'll know how to find it. You can get it online, but I buy mine. Actually, I find that Home Goods has it. TJ Maxx sometimes has it. So when I see it, I buy a whole bunch of it. But any vanilla extract that you like would be fine. Even if you're using an imitation vanilla, that's fine. If you really want to get fancy, you can use vanilla bean, which is from, you buy the vanilla bean and you want to scrape out those vanilla beans and you can add those in. But you want to wait until the recipe is completed before you add your vanilla, because you don't want to scorch it or cook it. It will have a much better flavor if you add it in right at the end, and I'll share that with you. Now, this is
Can
starting
I-
to come.
Liz, can
Yep.
I just ask you a quick question because it's related to now?
Sure.
People asked if you can use half and half instead of the, half cream and half milk.
Yes, you can use the half and half if you'd like. I like to use more of fat content. But I noticed when I made it with just the milk, it just seemed to take a little bit longer to come to finish. But you can use any one of those items by themselves or a combination. Sometimes I find I don't have enough heavy cream, but essentially I mix the milk and the heavy cream and I kind of have half and half. So it's pretty much the same thing. Now, my milk and cream mixture has come to a simmer. So here's where we are tempering it in. And this is a great lesson for whenever you're going to have a recipe where I want you to gently warm up the egg. So I'm just doing a splash of my hot milk cream mixture and then whisking that in a little bit at a time, and then pretty much reach an even temperature here, a little bit more at a time, and then I'm just going to put it all in together. So again, the idea is that I'm bringing those eggs up to temperature by slowly adding in my milk.
Liz, there's another question. A person wants to know, can you use vanilla powder?
I personally never used vanilla powder, but if you have used it before as a flavoring, you certainly can. I just don't know what the measurements would be. But that's a great question. Some people may have vanilla paste that they want to use, so I'm sure that would be another option for some cooks. So if you've had experience using it, by all means, go right ahead and use that. Okay, now I've got my egg and milk mixture ready. So we tempered the eggs. So as you can see, let me just grab a little ladle here. It is very loose, right? There's no thickness whatsoever. And I want to show you another thing, because one of the tests for knowing if your creme anglaise is finished cooking is to take the back of a spoon, I use a wooden spoon, and I pull my finger through there. Now you can see here that space that I put my finger through is filling back up, right? Because this is very loose. But once this becomes cooked, you will notice when you dip your spoon in and you run your finger across that it leaves an open channel. That is an indication that this will be ready for you. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to lower this temperature down. I'm not, I don't often use a burner like this. I typically use a gas burner, so I'm kind of playing with what is going to be high enough. So again, I want to go for a simmer. So I've got a low boil going on. Let me see if I can see here. So this also offers a temperature. So when I played with it earlier today, I figured that 200 degrees was good. So it's like a medium low. So here we're going to add this in on top. And now this is where, it's all about the time. So we're going to check out what should be, and I'm going to set a timer here just so I know it's about between 6 and 8 minutes, depending on how long you are, how high your heat is and how long this goes. So I'm going to start this. I did this earlier today and it took about 6.5 minutes to cook. But the key thing here, and again, I've added this to the recipe. You want this custard to be at about 175 degrees. So at about 6 minutes, we're going to check that out. Now, what I'm doing here again is I'm just constantly moving this across the my bowl here. You can open this up and take a look. Is that really boiling? That seems to be boiling quite high to me. So I'm going to drop down the temperature a little bit. If it's boiling too high, then the proteins in your eggs are going to cook too fast and they're not going to thicken. And then you're going to get that separation or that curdling, almost like scrambled eggs. Now, another thing to notice too, is you see how there's like this white fine foam on top of my mixture here. As this thickens up, what you'll notice is that from the center, that white foam starts to move out to the sides as it thickens. And so that's another indication that, oh, okay, it's cooking up nice and slowly, and it's heating up and it's thickening up. So that's something else to watch for. So I'm going to, again, I'm just looking below, and I'm gonna raise this up just a little bit again, just to get that little bit of a simmer going. And then this will thicken up. So if there are any questions, feel free to ask. One of the things that I love about a crème anglaise is the flexibility of the sauce. This is a basic custard sauce, and there are so many different ways that you can use this. So first off, the basic way that I was going to use it today was to have with berries. Okay, so like a light custard, especially after it's refrigerated, that will help to thicken it up. Another way you could use it is you could use it as a sauce to drizzle over a beautiful cake of any kind, chocolate cake. If you have a sponge cake, that would be wonderful. You could also serve this with a tart or with pies if you'd like. So a lot of ways to serve this alongside something. Now, crème anglaise is also the base of a custard. So if you have a recipe for a egg custard, say you're doing a filling for some kind of a tart, or you're going to make a custard that's going to be served on its own like a pudding, this is going to be the base. So learning how to do this will take you to many other recipes. This is also the base to a French style custard ice cream. And so for you today, I'm preparing this obviously on camera, but just to be safe, I prepared one earlier. So I'm going to, after the class is done, I am going to combine the two and put them into my ice cream maker. And I am going to make a delicious French vanilla ice cream. So that is another way that you can use your crème anglaise. You can also use it as the basis for a really good buttercream. Once you have this all prepared, you can whip in really good butter, and that will help to create a buttercream frosting. I did give you in the updated version of the recipe, there is a link to an article that I read that gives you all of that information along with the little with the recipe. Now, I'm going to go ahead and stick this is my instant read thermometer. You should always have one or two of these at home. And this is going to be really helpful. We're looking for a temperature of 175 degrees. Again, notice how I'm moving my whisk across constantly. And so I've got right now, we're coming up on 160. So we're almost there. The other thing I want you to see is, remember I told you about those bubbles, how there's the fine bubbles. Now, let me zero in on this, as this is almost done cooking, you can see how the center, the yellow the bubbles are kind of moving off to the side. And that is an indication to me that, oh, I think it's getting to be finished cooking. So one more temperature check here, and we're only at 5 minutes with this. So it depends on, how high your flame is. We don't ever want to go super high to a boil, because that definitely will cook your egg too fast.
Hey,
Ladies,
Liz,
yeah.
oh, as far as vanilla goes, is Mexican vanilla better than the US kind or the other kind? Because it's and cheaper, because you can buy it in Mexico cheaper than in the US. That was the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it all depends on your own taste buds. That's what it comes down to. Years ago, I was reading Cooks Illustrated, which is one of my favorite Sciencey Cook magazines, and they did a review of vanillas. And in their cooking examples, they found that really taste-wise, imitation vanilla did a really good job. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on a really expensive vanilla. Now, the vanilla that I get is not a Mexican vanilla, but I gotta tell you, I really love the flavor. I like it better than some of the Madagascar vanilla or whatever, but that's me. So there's no right or wrong answer for that question. So it all depends on how good does it taste. And of course, if you are concerned, look at the ingredients and see what ingredients are in there. If there's more than alcohol and vanilla bean, maybe you don't want that. But listen, you can make your own vanilla too. It's easy enough. It's really the steeping of vanilla beans in rum. You could do it in vodka. It can be that simple. So it's a lot easier than we think.
And Liz, another
Yeah.
question was, when do you add salt and vanilla?
So once this is done, okay, and we're getting up to that point, when it comes off, we are going to strain this, and then I will add my vanilla and a little pinch of salt. And so I like to wait to the very end. All right, and then we're now right at about 160 degrees, and we're at 7.5 minutes. So I'm gonna just take that off in just a second. But what I'm noticing here is, like I mentioned to you before, those little tiny coating of those tiny little bubbles has really started to move away and become less and less. So it's just about finished up here. All right. Now, the other thing to know about this sauce is it is another version. There's another version of a sauce very similar to this, an Italian custard, dessert custard, and it's called a zabaione, and that is made with wine and eggs. You can use champagne, you can use, I've used other sweet wines with it, and that's another version of this. Okay, so we've gotten to our 175 degrees. I'm pulling that off. I'm going to turn this off. And then the next important step is to strain it, because there could be some yolk in there that has slightly curdled. That's okay. That's often to be expected. So here I have a fine strainer, and I'm just going to pour my sauce into that. Okay, get everything down from the bottom. All right, and then drain that through. And I really didn't curdle anything in there. Okay, so there's our sauce. And now we're gonna go ahead and add our vanilla. Okay, and you can use between 1 and 2 teaspoons. One thing I found interesting and worth noting is that if you are making a tiny little pinch of salt, not much, if you are making ice cream, you might want to, because ice cream obviously is cold, it will it hinders flavor. So you may want to add, if your goal is to make ice cream, you're going to add a little bit more sugar, and you can add more vanilla if you want. Okay, so now we've got our spoon. I take my finger down the back, and there we have that separation that doesn't fill in. So that is what we're looking for as another indication, one of those final indications that yes, this has completed the cooking. So 175 degrees, right on target, but also you can do the back of the spoon and check that out. So here I'm just going to set this aside. Now, if you want, if you really brought it too close to the edge and you're straining it out and there's some curdling, you can also help by putting this into an ice bath, but I think we're pretty safe. So I'm just going to set this to the side. So that's our first sauce. Now I wanted to show that to you. So here is a lovely little display of berries with my custard, but I want to show you what that custard thickens up to. So let me just get a plate for you. I did make this earlier this morning, and I let it sit on the counter to cool down, and then I put it into the refrigerator, and then you can see how beautiful that custard is, right? So that thickens up. I just wanted to show you that it does stand on its own. It's absolutely delicious. This can stay in your refrigerator for 2 to 3 days. You can freeze it if you want, but then it would be more of an ice cream, but put it into an ice cream maker and you'll have a really delicious ice cream. So we'll bring this back out at the end when we bring out our caramel. So I'm ready to move on to my next recipe. Were there any other questions about the custard before we move on?
I don't see any.
Okay, good. That's always a safe thing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get our our caramel started. So caramel, again, is a little bit on the tricky side because cooking with sugar, you have to be very careful that you don't overcook because it will go from just a sugar water to a heated sugar to softball stage, hardball stage, and then it'll go right into caramel super fast. So you have to be on the lookout for that. So we're going to keep our eye on that. And then for those of you who are cooking along with me, if you're unsure of whether you want to use those spices, that's entirely up to you. You do not have to use the spices in this. You're still going to make a delicious caramel. So don't worry about that. I'm going to leave that up to you. Now, my caramel is going to start with 1 cup of sugar and 1/3 cup of water. And the first thing we want to do, I'm going to bring this up to the boil, is we want to bring this up to a simmer and eventually to the boil so that the sugar dissolves first. So there are a couple of stages. So we want the sugar to dissolve first, and then we're going to keep an eye on it. And in the next, 5 minutes or so, it will then, I'm just going to get my timer. Sometimes I find that the timer, if I follow my recipe using the timer as the recipe calls for, it just really makes it so much easier. It's helpful to understand. So here, I just want to get my sugar dissolved, and then we're going to bring it up to that boil, and we're going to keep an eye on it. Now, the spices I'm using in here, I love the spices. I think it adds a lot to a dessert that I might be using, or especially putting it over ice cream. So I get to combine both of these recipes by making the vanilla ice cream, and then I'm going to use my caramel sauce on top. The beautiful thing about a caramel sauce is it will last for quite a while in your refrigerator. So that is something to know. Put in a sealed container. I've had my caramel sauce last for months in the refrigerator, but I have also frozen it as well. So you can freeze your caramel sauce, take it out, and then have it for the next time you have guests over. So I often do that, and it's been just fine. It's been delicious. So again, now what I've done here is I've had the sugar has dissolved, and now we're going to let this begin the cooking and the caramelizing. Now, what you can see here is that these bubbles are moving very fast. But as the caramel, as it starts to become more of a caramel, those bubbles will slow down and become smaller. And then all of a sudden, it's going to start to turn that wonderful amber color. And that's what we're looking for.
Liz, Liz, question, can you use light brown sugar?
I have never done that myself. Light brown sugar does have molasses in it, so I'm not sure how that does when you're making a caramel. Could you try it? Absolutely. I mean, it's only a cup of sugar and a third of a cup of water. So it's not, you know, an expensive experiment to try on your own. The only thing I would say is if there's an issue with the molasses, the other you won't be able to see that it's turning that caramel color. So you know, you really have to be very cautious with that you're not overcooking it. When I'm just using regular sugar, I can see it begin to turn that caramel color, which is ultimately where I want to get to. Okay. And you know, you can flavor your caramel in very many different ways. I used to work at a restaurant, and I used to make an orange garlic caramel that I would then serve with drizzled over chicken, and that was delicious. So we start the same way, but once it starts to turn that caramel color, instead of heavy cream, I would add orange juice to it, along with, well, I'd add the garlic first so that the hot caramel would cook the garlic. Then I would add the orange juice to it, and then a little bit of heavy cream. And that was an amazing sauce. So your caramel can go from sweet to savory. The key for you today is that you're learning how to actually make a caramel. What you will notice is that I'm not touching the pan. You'll start to see little bits of almost sugar crystals forming around the edge. We don't want to touch this too much, because the more we stir it and the more we move it, the more the crystals will move up the side of the pan. If you find that there's a lot of crystals and you want to get rid of them, what I have here is just a bowl of water, and I just take my brush and I'm just above the line of where the sugar is. I'm just dropping some water, and that will help to melt the crystals and bring it back into the base of our caramel. Okay. So now I'm going to be adding heavy cream to this. This is you could also add heavy cream and a little bit of butter. You may see a recipe that calls for butter. So this will be the finishing of our recipe. And of course I have the spices and my vanilla. Now, I love this spice combination to add to desserts. I think it really surprises people, and really surprises them how much they like that sweet savory combination. So the spices that I'm using I'm using cardamom, I have cumin, I have a little bit of fresh red pepper. You can put that out or add it in. You could do less if you like. And I have a little pinch of salt here that will lift those flavors. And then of course I have the same vanilla that I used in the other recipe and my heavy cream. So I'm just going to rinse off my whisk so that that will be ready to whisk in our heavy cream when the time comes. But as you can see, again, this is going to take a few minutes. So, and we're really looking for that caramel color to come into play. Okay, so just bring that in so you get a closer view of that. You can also see how my bubbles have slowed down. You know, in both of these recipes, we're cooking with our eyes as well. So really kind of keeping an eye on that. And I can tell by both of the recipes, by looking at the bubbles on the surface, having done this several times, I start to understand the cues that the sauce is giving me. So as this thickens up, there's less movement, and then of course those bubbles will get smaller and smaller. Okay, so we're probably, I'm going to guess we're about a minute away from finishing this up. Okay, ladies, were there any other questions about the sauce? No, I guess.
I don't
No,
see any.
No,
Good. I guess that's a good sign.
somebody did ask about a link to the recording that was in the beginning. So we do have a link on AARP website, but it doesn't come up for a couple of days. And then you can get a link to the recording of this production. I don't know,
Great.
Liz, if you do it or not, but I know AARP does. Yeah.
No, your AARP is under control here. Okay, now I'm going to interrupt. So here you can start to see that the caramel is happening, right? So you see that it's starting to turn that amber color, all right? And I'm going to give a little bit of a swirl. Now this is where we're going to get into some real dicey area. So I can start to smell, okay? I'm going to let this go for just a few seconds more. All right, I'm waiting till it all gets to be a little, that caramel color. And that looks perfect to me. I'm lifting it up off of my cooking surface. I'm adding in, you see how now it's beautifully browned, just kind of swirling it around, and then adding in my spices, letting them cook in that heat for just a few seconds, right? Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and start to stir in my cream. You have to be very careful because adding this in, what that's going to do, you see how that steams up? If you do not get out of the way, you can burn yourself from that steam. So be very careful. Now, this cream is cooling down my caramel to keep it from overcooking. Okay. And it may look like it's curdled to you if you add it in all at once, but it will smooth itself out. Now there's a little bit of stickiness here on the side, so I'm just using my my whisk to kind of get that stickiness, which is just the caramel that has kind of crystallized off the side. And I'm just going to let it cook for just a few more seconds. Now it's all combined, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off my burner. And we're going to add in, now it's time to add in the vanilla. And I already had the salt in with my spice mixes. And that's it. This is my caramel sauce. Really quick, really easy. But we understand now what we're looking for in the cooking process. Neither one of these sauces is a sauce that you want to be preparing while you've got other things going on in the kitchen. You really want to take the time to focus on these, on the cooking process in both cases, okay? So let me show you, let me just take these few things out of the way because I want to show you how beautiful this sauce is. Now this has just been sitting out at room temperature, and as it sits, it thickens up. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here. And then I'm just going to take my spoon, and again, I just want to show you, there is our caramel sauce. Now, if you would like that to be a little bit looser, you could add a little bit of hot water to this, and that will make it, you know, a little bit of a looser sauce. Or if you just heat it up in the microwave, that will definitely smooth it out. But you can see the difference between the two, how right off the stove, it's very loose, but as you let it sit at room temperature and then put it into the refrigerator, it will thicken up to more of what you expect for a caramel sauce. Served hot, it's obviously you have to warm it up just to get it to be a little bit easier to drizzle. But again, if you want to have it a little bit looser in general, you can add some hot water to that, and that will loosen up your caramel. So for me, what I'm going to do with my, I have a lot of caramel here. So what am I going to do? I am going to put this into jars, and I'm going to give these out as gifts to friends of mine, or to take when I go to a dinner party. It's always a nice gift. And they're very shelf stable. The caramel is very shelf stable. If you're going to bring your creme anglaise with you to a party or as a dessert sauce, keep it refrigerated. You can serve it at room temperature and slightly warm. It just depends on how you want to do that. Now, as a little bit of a treat, I thought, oh, I know, I could do one more sauce just to show you how easy it is to make. So let me just show you a raspberry sauce very quickly. These are frozen raspberries. I had 2 cups of frozen raspberries and about a 1/4 cup of sugar. And I put the sugar on top of the raspberries and let them thaw. Okay. And in the thawing, the sugar then melted. Okay. So now it's all mixed together. So I'm going to go ahead and let me just grab one of my ladles. This is a really great tip for making sauces. And if you have to separate, in this case, with the raspberries. Now, certainly you can cook this with cornstarch if you want, and that will help to thicken it up. But I thought, I'm just going to show you a really super quick, easy, anytime sauce that you can make yourself. So by taking a ladle and pressing your now thawed out berries that are mixed with sugar through a fine strainer, by pressing it with a ladle of any size, it's just that it's got the rounded bottom, so that makes this easier. Then you're going to press out all of the delicious fruit and leave the seeds behind. Now, I can serve my sauce drizzled over ice cream or cake if I wanted. Also, if you want and to thicken it, you can then take what I've just done here and thicken it with a little bit of cornstarch over the heat, and that will thicken it. But for right now, I have just made a really delicious raspberry sauce, and it was that easy. So could you do this with strawberries? You can, as long as you can really mash them up and get as much of that juice out as possible. Now, what are you going to do with these seeds? Me personally, that's when I have in the evening, I have yogurt and I mix this in with my yogurt. So nothing goes to waste. You can put it in with oatmeal, anything like that. Just remember there are seeds. So if seeds are a problem for you, maybe that's not the answer. But here we have, in a pinch, a real quick, easy sauce. But we have the other 2 sauces that you have the recipe for. I think you could remember this, right? This is just frozen berries with a little bit of sugar, let them thaw out together and strain them. And there you have an easy sauce. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. But I think our class is done. Like I said, I've created a wonderful page for you. So before we go, I'm going to take you back to that page so that you can find that easily. If you go to where it says Food and Fun on my website, where it says Recipe Blog, right here is the AARP Cook Along classes. And there I've given you all of the recipes for our classes that we've had so far in this series. And then we have a class coming up on March 21st, that's cooking with beer. So I hope you'll join me for that class. I'm going to make my favorite chocolate stout cake. And you know what? Maybe I'll pull out my caramel sauce and we'll serve that with it. And then of course, a cheddar beer soup. So feel free to check that out, or all the other recipes on my recipe blog. And those are all there for you as well. Ladies, do we have any questions before it's time to go?
We have a couple. One
Good.
was, would you really repeat again the amount of sugar for the raspberry sauce? And another one is, how much cornstarch to the raspberries?
Well, I just used a 1/4 cup, but I don't like my raspberries too sweet. If you like really sweet raspberries, you could put up a 1/2 cup. It's really to taste. So far as the cornstarch goes, I would make a slurry with a tablespoon of cornstarch and 2 tablespoons of water. And you make a slurry with that. And as this is heating, you get this to a simmer, just add in a teaspoon at a time to see how thick you like it. So you could do that.
Okay, so you answered, you put water with the cornstarch.
Yes, you want to make a slurry. You don't ever want to add cornstarch dry because it'll just, it won't blend in well. So whenever you use cornstarch, you're always going to make a slurry with water. So it's usually 1 part cornstarch to 2 parts water.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I think that's it, right?
I
Karen?
think so.
All
No,
right.
I don't see any.
Oh, good.
Okay. Well,
I see
thank
lots
you
of
all.
things.
We want to
Wonderful.
thank you, Liz, for this wonderful cook-along demonstration and all the wonderful participants. The sauces look wonderful. And I, as always, learn a lot today. Today's cook-along demonstration is just one of the many upcoming virtual offerings through AARP, and we hope you'll come back and join us for more. To learn about AARP New Hampshire's virtual offerings, including coffee and conversations, gentle yoga, educational webinars, and more cooking demonstrations, please visit www.aarp.org/New Hampshire NH. If you are interested in volunteering for the AARP New Hampshire community team, please contact us at nhaarp@aarp.org. The next cook-along demonstration with Liz will focus on cooking with beer, and she already mentioned it. It will take place on Tuesday, March 21st at 2 p.m. And you can register for this cook-along demonstration on the AARP website. Again, www.aarp.org/NH. Thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody.